removing enabling and how to properly manage that. Because you're right with like suicidal thoughts. I'm like, oh, I need to be able to stop this and prevent this because this is my kid. And that's our like nature is to protect them. And even if that's from themselves. Unfortunately, you can't. And you can only support them through it. And I had to, that was the radical acceptance that really, really made a big difference for me, was accepting that I can't change the outcome of what happens here.
Welcome back to the You Need a Counselor podcast. This is a show presented by Heart and Solutions Counseling Agency. We release new episodes every Sunday at 5 p.m. Central and encourage you to batch up that laundry, put away the dishes, plan for the week ahead, or do any other task that might seem daunting while you give our show a listen. You might just be encouraged to call your therapist, connect with this week's guest, or seek out those services you've been considering for a while but haven't made the commitment to yet. If you are in the state of Iowa and are in need of mental or behavioral health counseling, give us a call at 1-800-531-4236. Enjoy the show.
Dr. Julie Johnson. I'm the president and founder here at Heart and Solutions, Mental Health Counseling and Behavioral Health Counseling in Iowa.
And I'm Krista Hunt. I am our Vice President in charge of the Behavioral Health Department. And this is our podcast, You Need a Counselor. So we are designed for people curious about counseling, but have barriers keeping them from experiencing the benefits of counseling. Our mission is to share stories about counseling, good, bad, and indifferent, and spread the message that everyone can benefit from mental health and behavioral health counseling services.
Our guest today is a member of our Heart and Solutions board. Our Heart and Solutions board is a quarterly compliance board in compliance with our Chapter 24 requirements in the state of Iowa for our credentialing, as well as an ethics and consult board to be able to help direct us as an agency when it comes to large decisions and small decisions. So we are very, very excited to have Ashley Casey here with us today. Ashley is a mother of 4. She is a licensed alcohol and drug counselor and is currently a graduate student studying mental health at Texas A&M. Ashley has been through a lot of different challenges in her life and supported family members through multiple different challenges where counseling has really helped those situations. So welcome, Ashley. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Wow. So now you're already an alcohol and drug counselor, and now you're studying mental health in your master's degree. Tell us a little bit about what drew you to this field.
Well, so it actually starts from childhood. I lost my mother to a drunk driver when I was 2 years old. And so I spent my entire childhood working with Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and with Youth in Action, which is like a lobbying group for youth up in Minnesota. And then, so I was on that side of the field, like trying to help others with drinking, reducing their drinking from a victim's perspective. And then I got into high school and I met my husband, who went through some addiction himself and comes from a long family line of addiction. And so that really changed my perspective on how I viewed helping in that field. And I went into a nursing program and decided right before I started that this wasn't really where I felt like my heart belonged. And I decided to go and pursue alcohol and drug counseling. And I have no regrets on that at all. Best decision I probably ever made for myself. And then as I worked in the addictions field for the last 8, 9 years, I realized how much the mental health and the addictions go hand in hand. And I felt like I could make a bigger impact and provide more services in a bigger picture through the mental health field as well. So my goal is to be able to incorporate those two together through dual licensing.
Awesome. And can you kind of talk about what your job is then as an alcohol and drug counselor? Like, what do you do on a daily basis?
Well, every day is very different. Historically, I have worked in residential settings for the most part. I've worked in probably all of the settings except for halfway housing. But in a residential setting, every single day is very, very different. And that's what I love the most about it is I don't come to work and just have monotony every day, brings a new adventure. But on the daily task list, includes, assessments and intakes and discharges, treatment planning, all of the above. I think I go through all of the 12 core functions in one day. So, but I think we do a lot of groups in the high intensity setting, and that's one of my favorite pieces of the job.
Absolutely. And as someone who's been so profoundly impacted by drunk driving and by alcohol addiction, leading to the death of your mother, what is it that you hope that those that you work with on their alcohol addiction know about that experience?
Well, I think that a lot of times people feel like it might not happen to them. And so just when it's relevant, I don't share that a whole lot of to my clients particularly, but when it's relevant, I will. And I think that that really changes their perspective on things, or at least it makes them think that maybe it could happen, even when we think it couldn't.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you mentioned a couple groups that you like started to get involved when you were still in school, Mothers Against Drunk Driving and Youth in Action. Can you kind of give some background on what those are and what the role of them are and what you did in those groups?
Yeah, so in for Mothers Against Drunk Driving, it actually started because my grandma, who raised me, she got involved after my mom died, and we did a lot of public speaking. We did victim impact panels for people who had DUIs or DWIs, and we did to use that as a intervention for the legal system. And so I told my story there. We did different workshops. I went to a workshop in Atlanta to present there when I was 15 years old. Um, we did a lot of mock crashes at schools. We did a lot of just speaking at schools, different youth groups that needed or wanted a speaker. So just a lot of public speaking there. And she was involved in the local chapter. So we did a lot of conferences and just very busy with that. And then with the Youth in Action, that was a group in the Twin Cities that was, I think there was maybe 10 or 15 kids in it. And we came together as a group and we would review the laws, the current laws on underage drinking and nicotine, underage nicotine use. Um, and we would go to the state capitol and we went to Washington, D.C., and we lobbied for making changes in the laws. Particularly, the Youth in Action group was geared towards underage. So we did a very peaceful protest in front of the one of the nicotine or tobacco facilities in Washington, D.C. For target marketing underage kids. So we did a lot of active work.
Wow, you have really dedicated your life to this advocacy. I think it's so beautiful, and I am so impressed that you're not only using your experience to help those that are struggling with addiction, but you're also putting together that mental health piece with that addiction recovery. So a lot of times when we think about drug and alcohol treatment and we think about mental health treatment, they're so separated so much of the time. Legislatively, they're very separate in terms of the care and treatment. They're very, very separated out. And so, can you tell us a little bit more about the connections there between the two?
Well, as you guys know, they're both in the DSM. Um, and so the comorbidity between them is very high. Which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Hard to tell. But I've just noticed, and it's statistically proven that there is a very large amount of mental illness in the addiction community and vice versa. People who have mental illness are using chemicals to cope. And so there's just a lot of connection between the two. And as a alcohol and drug counselor, I feel like we approach how we treat the disease or the disorder with a lot of the same approaches we do with mental health. It's kind of weird to me that it's not more connected legislatively as I think it should be.
Yeah, agreed. And I know you mentioned too, okay, so you were involved in all this in school and then you met your husband who he struggled with addiction. So I would like to like what that was kind of like, okay, I've been like advocating against drunk driving and now I have my husband and his families has a history of addiction. How was that kind of combining those two and being able to like be with someone who struggles with addiction as well while you've also been like advocating against that for so long?
Yeah, well, fortunately, I'm a person who sees a person for themselves and not their choices, because I believe that, like for my husband, he has a really good heart, and I seen that in him the whole time, and so I stuck with him until he could get better, and it's been great. But when we first started dating, my family did not like him very much, and um, he's very well aware of that. It was definitely a challenge to bring these two lifestyles together. And I think that I have been able to, effectively um, show both sides of the world that they're both okay and not to judge other people.
Absolutely. And it's always, there's the biological genetic component when it comes to so many addictions or propensities towards different addictions. And alcoholism, especially there's a biological component that can kind of make us more likely, right, to have these challenges. And I think about myself and my husband. I'm adopted from Korea, but my biological parents struggled with gambling addiction for so long, to where it shut down their business that they were running, and completely changed their lives. And then on my husband's side, alcoholism and drug abuse, really running, through the generations, and we can kind of see those patterns. And then I think about my daughter and I go, oh man, genetically, you're in for a challenge, right?
Yes,
You've got it from both sides. And not only, drug and alcohol addiction, but we think about food addiction, right? We think about the propensity to have workaholism, just all of the things that we as humans tend to use. Sometimes it's a chemical that we tend to use to try to cope with what's going on around us. But sometimes it's a behavior like working or overworking or underworking. And so when we think about that, we think about that, how that works in our families. I love your approach because absolutely, we all have these challenges. We all have something, right, that we go to for comfort. When something doesn't go the way that we want in our lives, we go to something for comfort. Whatever that thing is, we all have it, whether it's, my daughter and her teddy bear, right? Or whether it's something else. So I just love your approach to this because it is person centered. It is people first. And we're not our addictions, right? We don't have to be defined by our addictions. And we don't have to be defined by the choices that we have made, right? We are able to be human. And so in being human, we can allow ourselves grace, and you're allowing grace for other people and so encouraging that they give themselves grace for making changes going forward, right? With building up the skills that it takes to use something else for coping, right? And to say like, no, yes, it's okay and normal and natural and human to go to something for comfort, right? We all have that
absolutely.
thing, whether it's a cup of coffee in the morning, right? Whether it's
Yep.
saying, hey, I'm going to be on a podcast, so I'm going to put on makeup because I'm going to feel more comfortable, right? Those are
Right.
all things that we go to for comfort and coping as we're just trying to navigate the natural challenges of life. And some of those ways that we might go for coping may be more harmful to ourselves and to others than other things are. And so it's managing that piece. But what I love about it is that no, somebody can be a person and have struggled with alcoholism, right? But they're still a human and a person.
Yes. And I like that you mentioned the biological piece of that because with having four kids, that is something that I've always had in the back of my mind. And I've always taught them since they were young that, if you drink or do drugs, it's really a coin flip, whether or not you have like this predisposition to an addiction. And so I've really been, working hard to get them to understand that as they grow up. And I think that's really important too for kiddos to realize if they come from an addiction um, family, a family with addiction, then that is a possibility.
Absolutely, because it can happen to anybody, right? Whether we have it in our family or not. But I say the same thing to my daughter. I'm like, look, when you're a teenager, your friends are going to be trying drinking alcohol. They're going to be smoking cigarettes. They're going to do, just please know that, like, you might not be able to do those
Right.
things, right?
Yeah.
And please take extra caution, knowing that you do have this running in both sides of your family. Even when you look at different behaviors, right? And the way that people like myself and my husband, right, we recognize in ourselves, like we tend to get a little bit obsessive about things, right? If we've got a
Yeah.
goal, we will hit
Yes.
it until it's dead, right? And so, because of that, because of knowing that tendency, knowing that the nature part of it, right, the biology part of it, she's at a higher risk factor, and then also the nurture part, right? You're growing up with us as
Hmm.
parents. You've also got
Yes.
that
Yes.
tendency that's going to be taught into you. And so, let's use that for good, and let's be just extra careful when
Absolutely.
it comes to those things that your peers are going to approach you with.
Yep.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And so, what kinds of now, do you have certain populations that you like to work with, or do you continue to enjoy working with youth and helping them to advocate for themselves, or do you work with all ages in the population?
I have worked with all ages. In the state of Minnesota, I have not had the credentials to work with children directly as a primary counselor for them, but I have filled in on occasion for the adolescents. I have worked with every population. I have worked from detox to outpatient, inpatient, um, men, women, children, all of the above. I have my first job as a counselor was with women, and I really enjoyed that. They ended up shutting down the women's unit where I was working at Mayo Clinic, and that was a really sad day. So then after that, I primarily worked with men, adult men, and that's great. I think that with the women, I had a lot more understanding as a woman as to what some of their perspectives would be, a little more sensitivity. And the men, it's a whole different environment with the men, in a good way too. And I don't know that there's a particular population that I like the most. I think they all are very unique and all come with their own great experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting too, because yeah, like every age group and gender can have addiction. And I think people don't always think about like children when they think about addiction as well.
Yes.
Um, you mentioned that you do groups a lot. Can you talk about what you focus on in groups and what kind of things you talked about in those?
Yeah. So my specialty group was family and relationships. I started doing the family program at Mayo Clinic on the weekends, and I very much enjoyed that because that's the perspective that I come from is on the family side of it, and so I feel like that's really where I can connect with other family members and help them understand what their loved one is going through, what they're going through, and just help them feel like they're not quite alone in the experience. Um, so I've really enjoyed that and relationships. I have been married to my husband well, we've been together for 22 years and since high school, and we've been through so many ups and downs it, and challenges as you would. And we got married when I was 18, so it didn't come easy by any means. And so I feel like I have a lot of expertise in the relationships area or advice that I can help, but mostly understanding. And I have run all of the groups from relapse prevention to recovery maintenance to coping skills groups to your primary, just your intimate small group. Um, I've done them all. And in addictions treatment, of course, we focus heavily on the relapse prevention and recovery maintenance piece of it. But I think that a lot of those other groups, like the relationships, is an important one too, because they do play a big factor into the recovery process and how your relationships with other people are. Um, so I've developed a lot of different games and come up with a lot of different curriculum for those groups. I think that if a client feels like they are connected to other people, their recovery can be a lot smoother with that support system in place, a healthy support system, and not kind of sometimes their recovery environment included a lot of people who were not healthy for them. And so just understanding sometimes the most basics of what does a healthy relationship look like and what does not look healthy in your recovery.
Absolutely. So many times the experience of stopping using a substance or stopping a certain behavior that feels out of control, a lot of times, so much of that process involves that processing through the relationship side of things. Because for so many people, going out and having a drink or having drinks on the weekends with friends, that tends to be kind of that social support, that the
Yeah.
support network, right? This is what we do. This is the group I'm part of. And it can feel very, very threatening for so many
Mhm.
people to say, okay, I am considering, I am willing to be open to the idea of not drinking anymore because I feel that I don't have control over it when I do. But
Yep.
the idea of losing that social support can be such a challenge. And so
Yeah.
I love what you're doing because you're intentionally helping to teach and to say, okay, this is how we can build other social supports for ourselves so that we're not isolating ourselves by changing this behavior. And I think that's so important. So I love that you're doing that intentionally with your clients and you're doing it kind of upfront because I think for so many people, until we go through that process, it doesn't click, right? Why
Right.
that would be so important, right? It's like,
Yeah.
we'll stop smoking, right? Or we'll stop
Yes.
just doing it. And so many people have that mentality. And I feel like, I can remember thinking back when I first started counseling and before I really had dug deeper into how addictions work and all of this. I remember having those feelings, right? Of going, how could somebody choose, this substance over their children, right? How could
Right.
somebody choose that? And then when I realized what my own addictions were, I went, I choose food over my kid all the time, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I choose work over my kid all the time, right? So then I was like, oh, I can understand it because I'm the same way with other things. And so I think once we can understand what our addictions are, what we go to for comfort, it does help us have that understanding and empathy for other people that are
Hmm.
struggling with it that much more. Um, and so I just really love that. And you've been through the family side. So I love that you really love working with families and supporting
Yeah.
families because you've gone through this on the family side and helped support your daughter through some challenges. Can you
Mhm.
tell us about that?
Yeah. So my daughter, she was, I think, 12 or 13 um, when we started really noticing there was an issue. It was, when you're going into when you're in your preteen years, you're not really sure if it's like hormonal or if it's, just regular teenage stuff or if it's, something that is transpiring. Um, and it was kind of like all of a sudden one day we can look back now in hindsight and see that there were signs leading up to everything, but like in that moment, it felt like it was just all of a sudden we were in a first episode psychosis, and everything after that for the next 2 or 3 years was just really like a whirlwind of chaos and emotions, and it was very challenging. Um, she really struggled with like suicidal thoughts. Um, she struggled with paranoia, and I don't know if that was more or less just her internal thoughts on, what she was thinking other people were thinking, and making those assumptions. But she really went through it, and as did the whole family, because when one person goes through it, your whole family unit goes through it. And because we are not, as a family, we're in it together, and we needed to all find a new way to approach life, um, in order to help her, so we could get back to kind of being somewhat normal in life. And it honestly was the best. Looking back now, in the moment, it was extremely difficult. And some days I, as a parent, just wanted to throw in the towel and just wished that it was over with, not life or anything like that or parenting, but just like the entire mental illness process. And um, but now I look back and I am so grateful that we went through it. Um, and not that it's a great thing to have to experience, but the outcome of it, of the persistence, the patience, of the growth that happened through that process, uh, has been absolutely remarkable. She is now on track to graduate a year early from high school. She's taking college classes. She is incredibly insightful, probably more insightful into her own self and her own emotions than most adults are. Um, and so when I used to fear how her adult life would look, now I'm fully confident that it's going to be a very positive experience for her. And that is all due to therapy, because even when I thought I don't need a therapist, we definitely did. And we as parents grew, she grew, the other kids grew. And so we've all benefited in one way or another from it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, how did you kind of figure out what was going on at the moment? I mean,
Yeah.
psychosis sounds like a scary word. So how did you kind of know like, okay, that's what's happening? And then what were your like first steps of like getting help? I mean, I'm sure when that happened, you had no idea what to do. And I know you mentioned you guys eventually got counseling, but can you walk us through like that process of figuring out like something's wrong and getting help?
Yeah. So, well, it had originally started, the first signs that we were like, gosh, this isn't like her, was a lot of stealing. But that wasn't as like alarming as like a first psychosis episode. But that was kind of our first signals that something maybe wasn't normal for her. And then all of a sudden, there was a moment where started becoming very suicidal. And she went through what looked like a manic episode. I mean, everything was just her room. She was just constantly drawing like anime figures, and would just ask really dark questions like, what is your biggest fear? And then like write them down. Just like her behaviors were very off the wall. We would be very happy 1 second, and then 10 seconds later, we would be crying hysterically for absolutely no reason. We don't know why. And then we would be, just the emotions were just everywhere, constant. And we didn't know. We were just walking on eggshells all the time. She wasn't sleeping. She was just really, really struggling. Uh, she went through, we went and took her to the emergency room when she attempted to take, or she took some pills. Um, and um, at that point, we also learned that she had some homicidal as well. Um, and then she was admitted for inpatient. And that really is where everything just like was like, wow, we really need to address whatever is going on, and get her the help that she needs so that she can be at her potential again. Um, she went through psychiatry, lots and lots of different medications, trial and errors, and now she doesn't even take any meds at all, at all. I don't know what it was that, as far as like a diagnosis. I mean, she's had every diagnosis that's possibly out there, depending on which situation we were going through. Most commonly, emotional dysregulation was the obvious. Um, but yeah, that was pretty much what triggered us to start and what we noticed about the first psychosis.
Yeah, and I love the way that you describe how you were experiencing this because as you're telling us your story, you're saying things like our child was going through this, right? Our child was experiencing this, and I think it's so tempting as parents or as family members to think, well, my child or my teenager is doing this to me, right?
Right.
That they're like crying for no reason and they're doing all these things and it's scaring me and so they're doing this to me. And what I love about the way that you're sharing your story is it makes it very clear to me that from the start that your family said, no, our child is going through this. Our child
Yeah.
is experiencing this, and it's not pleasant for her. She is not
Right.
enjoying this.
No.
She's not doing this
No.
to us to harm us. She's going through this, and we're going through it by extension because we love her so much, right?
Yeah.
And so it's such a different way of looking at that experience. And I think that especially when the symptomology presents itself as it does in those early teens and then through teenage years and sometimes in those early adult years, there can tend to be that feeling of, is this just normal, right? Is this just how
Right.
teenagers are? Is this just and so going through that. And so I love that you also prefaced your story by saying like, yeah, this is what I can know about our situation and what happened in hindsight, because it really helps those who are going through it now to go, but I didn't know, right? I didn't know two
Right.
years ago that this was happening. I didn't know until it got to this point.
Yep.
And what your story really shines through for somebody going through it right now is that no, we're not expected to know what to do. We're not expected to have all the answers. You had been a drug and alcohol recovery advocate for your whole life, right? And
Yes.
and still, when it happens to our own child and our own family, right, we can feel so helpless, and that is normal. It doesn't say anything about us as a parent.
It
And when we
doesn't.
hear other people's stories, yeah, they know things, they have insight to share with us because they're at the end of it, right? They've gone through it.
Right.
Now they can look back and see those things. So I
Yep.
just really love the way that you share it because it really is so hopeful for those kind of questioning right now, right? Like, is
Absolutely.
what my child's going through just normal or do we need support, right? And even if it is like normal teenage stuff, we probably still need support, right? 'Cause they're
Oh,
still struggling.
100%. 100%. I think that we did that a lot. We had a lot of doubts on what we were doing the whole entire process. It was, you know, they'd give us a diagnosis, and I'm like, maybe this is just normal. Like maybe she was just had a rough patch, and this is just normal stuff. And I'm like, some people's hormones are way worse than others. She's a teenage girl. Who knows? And then, then there's times where we're like, no, this is so bad. Like, so we were just constantly going back and forth and what to do and how to approach it. And there's just no easy answer. It's just whatever she needs in that moment is what we need to give her.
Yeah, and you mentioned that your whole family had to adapt, had to
Yeah.
create new ways of being together and new ways of supporting each other. Can you tell us about some of those changes that you made in your family to support your daughter and to support each other?
Yeah. Well, the biggest thing was, I think, when in the early stages was how to discipline in a positive way. We the way we were doing it was fine. It worked for us. But then when that came on, it was like, well, we had to change things a little bit because you can't, you still have to hold a child accountable to their actions, but also have to touch it with some grace and understanding of what they're going through too. And so my husband and I went through a 16-week parent management training with her therapist on the side of her own therapy. That's where our personal therapy experience in that situation started, was with the parent management training. And it seemed very basic. And I thought, this is so juvenile for a 13-year-old, but it really, really worked for her. And we just kept building on those steps. And eventually, we really didn't even need to go by the training course anymore. It was just kind of embedded in her. Um, and it just taught her like what our expectations were. And we understand what you're going through. And we also have these expectations that need to be withheld too. And if you need something, you need to communicate that with us. And just so it just taught her and us a lot of skills. Um, and then we went through DBT with her for 6 months or 9 months, something like that. And my husband and I took turns and we did our individual therapy on the side because that was required of the chorus. And then she did hers. Um, Also, one of the best things that I think I've ever gone through in counseling. I've done my own personal counseling, like just talk therapy and stuff, but this was really helpful. And again, it was just something that seemed very, very juvenile in the skills, but I realized quickly that even as simple and easy as the skills were, I was not utilizing them in the right ways and when needed. And so learning to, that even helped me grow as like a professional in the field, like how I communicate with like my boss or with other people. Um, it was, DBT was really life changing as well. And like, just, I think the biggest thing for that was radical acceptance and just knowing that it's going to be okay. Whatever happens, that was uh, one of the biggest skills I had to learn. And although we say it all the time, do we mean it and do we practice it?
Yeah, that's really
And
cool
the,
that, oh, go ahead.
oh, I was just going to add, and as far as the other kids, they learned a great amount of forgiveness and a great amount of grace. Um, they are not judgmental of other people because they know that people struggle and everybody has the things that they go through. So it's really taught them a lot on grace and humility.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really cool that they had you guys do like a parenting class along with doing therapy with her. I feel like that's not super common.
Yeah.
Can you give some examples of like, I know you mentioned like positive discipline of things that you would like implement that seem to help? Or like you had said, like, I'm learning these things, but I wasn't like knowing the correct way to like implement it. So how to like appropriately implement those things with them too. And then did you try and do it like with all four kids, or were you focusing mostly on her? Do you think it kind of helped all of them together to discipline differently then?
We started with just her, and then we moved on to kind of everybody. Um, and I did implement this with my son too, when my youngest one, because he's 12 now, and so as he was coming up in age, we also used this with him so that we wouldn't have to worry about backtracking later. Um, some things like, uh, okay, you giving free will, like you don't have to. This is what I expect of you. Now you can choose to do this, or you can choose this other option. And that kind of reduces the rebellion. And just simple things like that that are really, I think a lot of parents do implement, um, but I think it could be more commonly practiced instead of being such a disciplinarian or an authoritarian. And just, um, we have a free will choice. And the less that we try to impose our directives on people, the less they're going to rebel. But we do still have an expectation that does need to be withheld. So, like, for example, you got, we'll say you got caught on the game for 30 minutes or whatever in the middle of the night when you weren't supposed to be on it. Well, then tomorrow, in the morning, the consequence will be something that is equated to the crime, we'll say. And then, so I'll say, like, well, maybe you will lose the game for a whole day or whatever. And if you choose not to do that, then your other option is you can scrub the floor with a toothbrush for 30 minutes, whatever, something like that. Then they have a choice. And additionally, we were taking like phones for like a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and we were taught that that's not helpful. And I thought that is so counterintuitive at first. And then when we started actually implementing like a 1 day discipline action, it actually showed me that it does, because then it gave the kids the incentive to uh, work. It did not feel so out of the possibility to get it back. When I took it away for a week, it was like, wow, I'm going to mess up in a week. So, why even try? So just simple things like that. And then, just like the use of charts in the very beginning, although she didn't really receive that well, but as a 13-year-old. But, we found other incentives for her instead of charts. And so we kind of modified it a little bit to make it work for us. But yeah, there was a lot of really good, just basic concepts of parenting that you don't think would make a huge difference, but they really do.
Yeah, I love what you're saying about letting go of control, right? As a parent,
Yeah.
it's so hard because there's a lot of ego tied up in being a parent. There's a lot of seeing our children as a reflection, as a mirror of ourselves, right? And going, okay, what my child does me is like a measure of my worth as a parent, right? There's a
Yeah.
lot of temptation to feel uh, like we need to hold on with so much control when it comes to our children because we love them. We want to protect them. We want
Yeah.
we want them to do well. We want them to have a happy life, right? And so there's such a tendency and it's so tempting to hold on, right? And to limit their decisions, but what it does is it stops that muscle from building in their brains of being able to make those decisions for themselves. They need practice with that. We need practice with that, right? Decision
Yes.
making is hard and it's exhausting. And so the more decisions that we're able to make, knowing that we have autonomy over those decisions, whether we like the outcome of the decision that we made or not,
Yeah.
we've still practiced that decision making muscle and that decision making ability in our brains. And so I love your example about the video games. My daughter will say, "Can I stay up until 10 o'clock tonight?" And I'll say, yeah, like I wouldn't recommend that. And here's why I wouldn't recommend it because you have a field trip tomorrow, right? And you're going to be walking
Hmm.
a lot and it's going to be hot out tomorrow. And so if you go to sleep at 10, you're only going to get this amount of sleep. And usually you do better if you have more sleep, right? But yeah, you can stay up until 10 o'clock. However, for me, because I don't recommend that, I'm not going to come pick you up after school if you say I'm too tired to walk home or bike home, right? I'm
Correct.
not going to, let you not practice your music tonight because you're too tired, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the decision that you're making, and you can make that decision. You're 8 years old. I can't stop you. I can't like tie
Yeah.
you to bed and make you
Force you
fall
to sleep.
asleep at 8 o'clock, right? Like you're gonna do what you're gonna do. So because my boundary is that like it's 9 o'clock, I gotta go to sleep, right? Because I won't be
Yeah.
fit for work tomorrow. And so being able to say like, yeah, you can wear those really pretty shoes to this event, but like I'm not going to carry you when they hurt your feet, right? Or
Right.
you can wear those. I would recommend sneakers because we're going to be in the sand and all of that. But like you can wear them, but just know that if you wreck them, I'm not going to buy you new
Yeah.
ones because that was your choice,
Yeah.
right? And so I just love those examples because it can be so tempting to be like, no, you can't wear those shoes, right? You have to wear
Yeah.
these shoes. No, you can't stay up until 10 o'clock. You have to go to bed at 8 o'clock, right? Because that's what we would recommend. That's the choice we would make because we've been through it. But letting her stay up until 10 o'clock and then be exhausted on her field trip and not have a good time, that doesn't
Okay.
harm me, right? It's not,
Yeah.
she's going to survive that and she's going to
Yeah.
learn through that. So I love that. And I also, that's that radical acceptance, right? That you're talking
Right.
about. So if my child comes out of her bedroom in the morning and she's wearing an outfit that it looks that I would not wear to school, right?
Right.
And she's like, I'm ready to go. I'm like, yeah, okay.
Mhm.
Because we have to actively, as parents, we have to, and as humans, we have to actively fight through that ego that says to us, if my child goes to school looking like that, I'm going to be judged as a parent, right? All the
Yeah.
teachers are going to be like, what parent sent their kid? Oh, it's that one, right?
Yes. Yeah.
As opposed to being able to say, like, if the other kids say something about that, that's how life is.
Yep.
And and then or if the other kids love it, then great. She knows more about her peers than I do, right?
Right.
And so that acceptance of like, yeah, if other people judge me because of what my kid is wearing, but like it's not putting my kid in danger to wear that, right? It's not harming her to wear. Okay, right? Like that is
Yep.
what it is. And so that there's just such a piece with being able to give away that feeling of control, right?
Mhm.
To not have that fear of loss of control drive our lives. And when we have children that are expressing suicidal ideation, that are expressing homicidal ideation, that's like that ultimate feeling of,
Oh
oh
yeah.
my gosh, I need control over this,
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
need to keep my child well. I need to keep my child safe. And so the idea that our child might harm themselves is like one of the ultimate tests of being able to accept that, right? And being able to say, listen, I'm going to do everything that is within my power to do, but ultimately it's not within my power, right? If my child is safe or not, if my child self-harms or not.
Right.
They are an individual person, and just by doing that, sometimes we can remove some of those barriers on our child because they don't have to rebel against that sense of
Right.
control, right? They can make their decisions. And once the idea of, yeah, you're allowed to make your own decisions, I would not recommend that one, right? Or I wouldn't make that decision. And this is why, but you can, just allows for them to go, oh, okay, I can do that. Now that's a viable option. Okay, actually, do I want to do that? Right? Maybe, and
Yeah.
maybe not, right? So I just love those examples, and I love that your whole family was on board.
Yeah. And can I reference a book?
Yes, please.
So I was recommended by the therapist to read the book I Love You or I Hate You, Don't Leave Me. I don't remember who wrote the book, but it's a very good book about borderline personality disorder and whether or not that was, going to ever be her diagnosis. That was a very helpful book in, and I think that not just specifically to borderline personality, but just challenging, behaviors where they rebel more. I think that was very helpful. And it did teach me a lot of that removing enabling piece to it and how to properly manage that. Because you're right with like suicidal thoughts. I'm like, oh, I need to be able to stop this and prevent this because this is my kid. And that's our like nature is to protect them. And even if that's from themselves. Unfortunately, you can't. And you can only support them through it and hope that they don't make the wrong choice in that situation. And I had to, that was the radical acceptance that really, really made a big difference for me was accepting that I can't change the outcome of what happens here. I can only support and I can hold accountable, like for consequences. If you are threatening, then the only way I can keep you safe is we need to go talk to somebody, you know. And I think eventually we got kind of sick of doing that. So we would just talk with the therapist. Not we, but she kind of got sick of going to the ER for evaluation and things like that. But um, or if we're having suicidal thoughts, then I don't, it's probably not the best idea to go, to a concert with your friends or something like that right now. But that radical acceptance was a huge factor, and everything, once I could accept that, and which is the hardest and most counterintuitive thing to accept, but everything changed. Everything started to come together after that. It wasn't overnight, but it definitely, and not that it ever felt right. It didn't ever feel right. It still doesn't feel right. Um, but now I can look back and go, but that's what needed to happen. I needed to stop protecting.
If someone's listening and they have a child that is going through some mental health diagnoses, stuff, what might you recommend for them to like get started in seeking out that support?
Um, well, I think with most things, I think you're just regular therapist, your outpatient um, therapist for someone to talk to, someone to get off things off your chest, or for an evaluation. If they suspect that there's a stronger mental illness, then that's where I would start with an evaluation and therapy. From that, we started with um, the Catholic Charities is the first place we went to because we're Catholic, and just felt like that would be an appropriate place. But they were not able to service the needs that she had, and so they referred us out. And um, from there, then we got all of the resources. They just come flooding to us. It was amazing how much support we got from just starting with the therapist and having your basic evaluation done right off the bat. And um, from that, we've had partial hospitalization, we've had inpatient, um, we've been through BS services, um, and we have been through now. I think it's been like 5 years of consistent weekly or biweekly therapy for the last 5 years. And so, but yeah, I would definitely just start with a therapist and someone to talk to and just get their input on which direction to take.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Just recognizing that the availability of support, the access to support is that key, because it acknowledges that we all need that support, right? If our family member is struggling with this diagnosis, we are too. We need that support too. They need the access to support, right? And it's their choice how they use that support. It's their choice if they use that support. But as support people, the piece that we have control over is that we're going to get access, right, to that support and that help, so that we know at the end of the day, we did what was within our control. I think that's so beautiful. And I love that you said that, like, yeah, that radical acceptance of, that my daughter could harm herself or could complete a suicide, that it still doesn't feel right. Like, right? Like it still feels so counter instinctual. And I love that because what you ended up doing was choosing connection with your child over being right.
Yeah. And my feelings.
Yes, exactly. And you're able to say, like, this is how I'm feeling, but this is what I know my child needs. And I'm choosing my child in this situation over what makes me feel comfortable and in control. Right.
Yeah.
And I just think that's such a beautiful, an inspirational example of that support.
Yeah. And we've always explained to her the whole time, like, well, all of the kids, this is, if we have to discipline at this point, this is why we're doing this. It's not a surprise. Like, and they know because through conversation, and I don't want to do this. I don't want to have to implement anything that hurts you or your feelings or anything like that or your social life or whatever. But I need you to know that I'm doing this because I want you to be successful and I want you to live up to your potential. And so in order to do that, I do have to hold you accountable, and it comes from a place of love, and they know that now. So
Absolutely. I love that. the consequences are not things that we as parents like want to do. And being able to communicate that to your children the way that you have is so key, because if I say to my child, hey, you've got to get your room cleaned up and your chores done before you go over to your friend's house this afternoon, right? And then I'll say, like, that's not the outcome that I want. Like, I want you to get it done because I have a free hour this afternoon, right? When you go
Right.
over there. So, like, of course, I don't want to like punish you to keep you home, but that is what's going to have to happen if you don't. And then we both kind of suffer from that choice, right? And
Yes.
that stinks for me too, but like that is what it is.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think now it's more of a collaborative teamwork effort and more understanding of each other's perspectives on why we do the things we do. So
Yeah.
I have no regrets. And, she, all of my kids in the house, everybody in our house has been through therapy and counseling at some point or another, for different durations and for different situations. But um, so I don't think I could be as effective a parent as I am. I mean, I still have lots of room for improvement too, but I wouldn't be nearly half the parent I am if it wasn't for counseling. Like I was a teen parent, and so my emotional understanding and my personal insights and my own development wasn't even quite in place when I started having kids. So having a counselor to help me become a better person myself and a better parent, I don't think I could have ever walked through this without a therapist.
Wonderful. Oh, I love that inspiration as someone who's continuing to go through it, right?
Yeah,
Because we're never
right.
done, right?
No,
We're never
absolutely
done with that
not.
process. And when you said I still have, work to do, I'm going to get like, yep, same, right? Because we
Yep.
always do. And so I just thank you so much for sharing your story here and for the work that you're doing and the work that you're going to be doing when you graduate with your master's. We are so excited to see you continue to work in the mental health field and to bring these connections to other people. Just think it's beautiful. We're so happy you're on our board. We love
I
getting to
love it.
hear from you. It's just wonderful. So thank you so much, Ashley, for being here.
I'm Ashley Casey, and I need a counselor.
And I'm Krista Hunt,
And I'm Julie Johnson, and we need a counselor.
and so do you.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the You Need a Counselor podcast. We are so grateful that you're here. Now, we want to hear from you. Text us or give us a call at 515-650-3231. You can also find and connect with You Need a Counselor on Facebook and Instagram. If you've enjoyed today's show, please take a moment to like, review, or leave a comment, as all of these things help others to find and benefit from the podcast as well. If you're in the state of Iowa and interested in mental health counseling or behavioral health intervention services, give us a call at 800-531-4236.